Star Wars is a franchise that is known for its iconic villains, from our first introductions to Darth Vader, Emperor Palpatine, Darth Maul and more. It is filled to the brim with menacing characters. Whilst Star Wars is known for these iconic villains, it wasn't until 2016 that we got a small glimpse of what a horror movie could look like set in the Star Wars universe, with the release of Rogue One. At the end of the film, we got to witness the true terror of Darth Vader mercilessly cutting down rebel soldiers. This begs the question, can Star Wars create a true horror film? The horror genre has been around since the beginning of time. People have always told tales of horrifying creatures such as demons, witches, ghosts and many other creatures. It is a genre intended to frighten and disturb the viewer, and has given us some sinister characters all the way from Count Dracula and Frankenstein to Michael Myers, Freddy Krueger and Jason. Typically, Star Wars sticks to creating content that is family friendly. However, in recent years we have seen them start to venture into other genres and make content more themed towards adults with shows like Andor. I think now is a great time to explore the horror genre with Star Wars. So, if Star Wars were to venture into horror, who would be our villain? I'm sure the first answer that would come to most people is Darth Vader. Whilst this seems like the obvious option, I think it would be better to take a character from the extended universe, and that character would be Darth Nihilus. Darth Nihilus is a Sith Lord from the EU. He was around during the Old Republic and is featured in the KOTOR games. I think Darth Nihilus would be perfect for a horror film because unlike characters like Vader, he has no humanity. Darth Nihilus is a wound in the Force. He has no physical body and is in constant hunger, which is only subdued for a brief moment when he consumes the life force of others. Now that we have our villain, what kind of subgenre would work for our horror movie? Horror is divided into many subgenres such as slashers, supernatural, found footage, etc. A mix of two genres would work perfect for this film. It should mix elements from the slasher and supernatural genres. The main inspiration for this film would be John Carpenter's Halloween. Halloween is a 1978 slasher. The film is set in Haddonfield and focuses on Michael Myers, a killer who escapes from a mental hospital and returns home on Halloween to unleash terror on the citizens of Haddonfield. Nihilus actually has quite a few similar qualities to Michael Myers.
I met this 6-year-old child with this blank, pale, emotionless face and the blackest eyes, the devil's eyes.
John Carpenter describes Myers as the Shape. He has the shape of something familiar to us, however his identity is hidden, which makes his depraved actions all the more horrific as it hits home to the viewers. This fits perfectly with Nihilus. After the events that led to him becoming this Sith Lord, he has lost his humanity, and it is only somewhat retained by the form that he takes. Another thing our film will take from the slasher genre is a final girl. Final girl is a term originally coined by Carol J. Clover in an article from 1987. The final girl is the main survivor of the film. She is used to confront the killer and is typically the one left to tell the story. The setting for this film should take place on a Jedi outpost in the Outer Rim. Our final girl will be a young Padawan who has just learned of her master's death. The master would be the first kill of the film. We would see him investigating a strange phenomenon in which people are being killed and left as corpses that have had their life force sucked out of them. Here will be our introduction to Nihilus. We will see him murder the Jedi Master and take his ship, which will lead him to the setting of the film. With our setting being this Jedi outpost, I want the film to play up the religious imagery of the Jedi. Shots focused on meditation, the scale and detail in the architecture of the outpost, and the daily life of its inhabitants. It is important to build the scenery as it makes the impact of the damage that will be caused by Nihilus all the more devastating. I want Nihilus's presence to be felt all throughout this film once he arrives at the outpost, even in shots that don't focus on him. One of the scary aspects of Halloween that Carpenter so brilliantly utilised was having Michael in the background of shots whilst our main characters were unaware. When I think of Nihilus, I think of a shadowy and menacing force, and that is how I want him to move around in this film. I would imagine he is not deterred by any obstacles in his way and is relentless in his hunt for his food. You wouldn't see him most of the time, but instead just his shadow, looming over his victims before he makes his attack. Naturally, with this film taking place in a Jedi outpost and our villain being a Sith, there should also be lightsaber combat. Unlike the previous films, I don't want this to be super detailed choreography, but rather desperation. Our victims will find themselves no match for our villain, and will do everything they can to survive, with it ultimately being in vain. In the case of our final girl, however, she will put up more of a fight but still fall short, only being able to save herself by calling on her rage from the death of her master. and using that to defeat Nihilus. Whilst this should be a victory for anyone else, it goes against everything her master has taught her as a Jedi, and has now sent her down a path that she cannot return from. This would also be a great setup to a sequel as well. One thing franchise horrors are known for is the killer always returning. Nihilus has no body of his own, as his use of the dark side consumed it and bound himself to his mask. Nihilus could return in his second film by having bound himself to our final girl upon his defeat, only possible through her action of giving in to the dark side to defeat him. Darth Nihilus isn't the only character that could be pulled from the EU to make a horror movie with, but I just think he is the perfect horror villain. Stuff like this would be great for Star Wars to reach out to older fans, as well as bringing in fans from the horror genre. I'd love to hear what everyone else would like to see if Star Wars were to do a horror story, so make sure to leave your ideas in the comments. If you like this video, please make sure to like and subscribe.